Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN PBS NPR. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I am your host, Marcus Atkinson. If you want to know more about Next 2.0, you can go to Facebook and like the page. You can follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie. There you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is an interesting show today, because I look on social media and lo and behold, someone shares an article from the Washington Post, no less, that features an incident or a series of incidents or interactions with Erie's county executive about DEI. And the article goes on to talk about DEI in the age of Trump. It talks about Erie, can Erie survive this moment, so on and so forth. And so the article is called "A Pennsylvania City's Bet on DEI, Can It Survive the Trump Era?" An article was posted on May 10th, 2025, Mother's Day, and it was written by Tim Craig. And this Washington Post article goes on to break things down about this push and pull between the county executive, Brenton Davis, and these DEI initiatives. Now, full disclosure, when you look at that article, the buildings that it has posted on the front page of that article are buildings owned by the East Side Renaissance, the nonprofit that I helped found it. Another piece of full disclosure is that myself and my business partners were caught up in this dragnet, in this push and pull, and we had to hire an attorney to have the funds that we were owed unleashed. And we did that successfully, might I add. We had to take out a full-page article to talk about the fact that this was unfair. And so you will hear me put on and take off this host hat several times, because I have to represent that side of it a little bit in the conversation, because I was and am still in it. And some of the work that we've done and we're doing at the East Side Renaissance is a matter of record. You can go to any news outlet online. You can Google it, East Side Renaissance area, and figure out all the work that we're doing. But when you see to what extent we are attempting to help revitalize Erie, it takes a lot of funding. And we've been blessed with a lot of funding from various sources, and we've done great work. But we were in the middle of this article that we're talking about today. But now, to help me unpack this article, I felt like, something, I'm gonna go back and get the person that was at the epicenter of this whole conversation. And so today, as our special guest, in order to bring context to this conversation, I'm bringing you the former chairman of Erie County Council, Mr. Carl Anderson. Carl, welcome to the show.
Marcus, it's great to be with you today.
So we appreciate you coming on. So this article was shared by a lot of people in Erie. And when you look at the article, I'll quote some different things here, but when you look at it, it had a ton of comments underneath it. And you saw the polarization that you see playing out in the United States right now, a lot of for, a lot of against, and some of the common narratives that we hear here. And even as I was watching people comment on it on social media, I said to myself, I want to go after this, but I want to make sure that the listener has someone who can give us the backstory. As Paul Harvey used to say, what is the rest of the story, right? Certainly this thing didn't spring out of nowhere. And so I want to take you back. Give us your background with county council and kind of create the environment leading up to the moment that is at the epicenter of this Washington Post article.
Well, Marcus, I do have to say, I think it's quite interesting. I'm not quoted in the article at all.
Yeah.
And I was the chairman of county council and put together the entire plan, of course, with my colleagues of the ARPA funding during 2021, which was the year I was chairman of council. And I think, unfortunately, Erie County, we as a community have been caught up in this extremism across the country from both the right and the left. And it really isn't about what Erie County is or what county council was trying to accomplish at that moment. What we were trying to do was ensure that everybody got something and nobody got everything, that there was fair equity across the board in the way that the funds were distributed.
When you read the article, two people that are quoted in the article, Bishop Dwayne Brock, who is one of the co-founders of the East Side Renaissance, our organization, And he also quoted um, Councilman Andre Horton, who's now termed out. His term is just about to finish. Councilman Horton said that the current sitting county executive, Brenton Davis, was an overt racist and that his policies were detrimental to Black and brown folk, and that was the general consensus. The quote for Bishop Brock said that Davis was trying to utilize Trumpian tactics in order to put forth his agenda. From an insider's perspective, how have his policies landed on your spirit since he's come into office? Because he's quoted in the article saying, when people don't get what they want, they yell racism. And he said that there were community leaders who sat in his office and said, and this is a quote from the article, if you don't give us money, we're going to call you a racist publicly. Was it that simple? What was your perception from county council's perspective?
Well, I was involved in the fight. Perhaps the only elected, or at that time formally elected, person who stood up to champion defending what we created as what we now call diverse Erie. I have concerns that what we created and what the promise was not delivered from the people who were supposed to deliver it. And it was certainly, no question about it, undermined by the now county executive, Brenton Davis. So I understand the electrifying nature of the comments of the gentleman that you mentioned, and I think they're accurate to that extent. But let's rewind a little bit to my time on council. As the chairman of council, I served on Brenton Davis's transition team, not as a supporter of his, as the chairman of council, to ensure that the plan that we put in place would be followed through. And I received commitments from him and his team that they would not touch the funding that county government had already put in place. In fact, we left in an unfunded account, or an unallocated account, $7 million, so he would have the ability as the incoming county executive to move funding in various programs that he was interested in undertaking. And of course, he has that right now as the elected official, but that in return for that, these other programs that were already funded would be left alone and would be left funded as county government, county council in particular, passed the 2022 budget.
Mm-hmm. So everything that you're describing sounds like an honorable pathway forward. When did the wheels fall off of this? From that plan to what ended up happening, it sounds like night and day. What happened?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure, exactly what happened or the genuine nature of the discussions. And I do have to say one thing that concerns me is with these extremists, there's no honor in anybody's word. You can't sit down and negotiate and come up with something that's fair for everybody and then expect these people to follow through, because they won't. So when did the wheels fall off? Immediately. I mean, I was going to say probably immediately, but certainly immediately upon him taking office.
Mm-hmm. So for the listener, we're on a national platform for NPR, and so there are a lot of people that listen to the show that are not from Erie. Give people a snapshot of what this county executive's tenure in office has looked like, because this situation does not encapsulate all the incidents that have happened in this administration. What has it been like with this person at the helm of county executive?
Well, my view on service, on being an elected official, is being about community service, not self-service. I've said it multiple times when I was on council. I've said it multiple times before I was elected and since. And the biggest concern we have, and I get it, that this is the fight across the country, but extremism is taking over. And Erie County has never been about extremism. Erie County has always been about moderation, collaboration, Sometimes that moves too slow for some people, and sometimes, unfortunately, it moves too fast for others. But Erie County is acceptable and understanding and able to be tolerant to the diversity of others in the community as time goes on. And what we were trying to create at that moment in time was progressive, out of the box thinking that was defendable in court, because we knew that across the country there were these extremist racist groups who were trying to undermine these types of progressive thinking programs. And we successfully did that to an extent, but we'll talk about the other issues that they were able to get into, but they weren't able to destroy the Diverse Erie Commission that we created, although they were able to stifle the funding and end up in court. But Erie County government has typically been able to work together and compromise, not have to end up in court. And so never in the history of Erie County has there been a situation where county council and county government have ended up in court so many times. So in unpacking all of that, since my time on council, there's been no other time in the history of Erie County that there's been so many lawsuits.
Yeah.
And it's the unfortunate extremism on both ends. But it's the level to which this county executive will go in trying to enforce that extremist mentality.
Mm-hmm. And so I think America has figured out, and we've pointed it out on multiple times on the show, that Erie County is a bellwether. Pennsylvania is a bellwether for these national campaigns, the presidential campaign in particular, but Erie County is a huge player. So there's a national interest in what's happening in Erie County. And so I wasn't surprised about the fact that the Washington Post picked up on this, and the fact that Trump is making it such anathema nationally, is making Erie even more relevant because of this. It quotes something about the mayor, and I want you to help tie these loose ends up for us. It says in January 2020, 4 months before George Floyd's death, Mayor Schember unveiled a plan to increase minority hiring in city government. And so it goes on to outline that. And then as the article goes on, it says the city's efforts to promote DEI were quickly matched by the Democratic-controlled Erie County Council. And also in September 2020, after protests erupted nationwide, including in Erie, the council passed a resolution declaring racism to be a public health crisis. Talk about that.
Yeah, so all of those things were happening, and the mayor certainly had some foresight in minority groups and new Americans. He's been a progressive thinking mayor to the extent during that time of those things that were going on. So he deserves credit for that. I believe that will be part of his legacy, a big part of his legacy when his time in office is finishes. But with county government, of course, we're elected by district. There's 7 districts, and 3 of those districts are within the city of Erie, because the city of Erie roughly makes up 40% of the population of the entire county. And so there's a somewhat of a coalition or collaboration with the movements of what are happening in the city and how those are also being affected in the context of county government. And so we try and balance that out between the two in the two distinctly different branches of government, but at the same time recognizing that the city of Erie is a part of Erie County. And so it's been said multiple times, because we're elected by district, that in trying to drum up the support to get the votes to get things passed, Erie County is literally like 7 distinct countries and trying to bring all of them together diplomatically becomes very sensitive at times. And of course, when we needed to fight the fight and ended up in 4-3 votes, like it happened with declaring racism a county health crisis. I'm proud to say that during most of what we achieved in the plans that we put forward in the ARPA funding was 7-0 votes. And I was the leader in that, in drumming up the support, in listening, learning, and leading, and then delivering to the people what it is that we felt was the best to uplift everybody. And as I said earlier, give everybody something and nobody everything.
Mm-hmm. And so while I have you here, and it's been debated on the show on multiple occasions, the narrative put forth that this is wrong, that this is something that we should not be about as Americans, as a country. It seems that the Republicans under Trump, that some of this MAGA ideology has taken root successfully, especially in the rural areas of not just Pennsylvania, but across the country, and in a lot of inner city areas as well. And it seems that the Democrats are somewhat lagging behind when it comes to putting forth ideas and helping America understand and recognize what they want to do for the country and what's the best pathway forward. Where do you think Democrats are going wrong? Because as shocking as it may seem to some, the ideology of a lot of this rhetoric that has come out of the White House is sticking, is taking root. From your perspective, unpack why do you think so many people are jumping on board with this? Because as racism being a public health crisis, in my mind, that makes perfect sense, right? But to a lot of people, it's like not so much. Where do you think this is being lost in translation?
Yeah, so I submit that it's extremism, and Erie County, as I said, is a tolerant leaning, progressive leaning thinking area, rooted in old line manufacturing and taking care of your family and fiscal accountability and responsibility. And so, I blame the extreme left for as much of the extreme right as the extreme right is to be blamed for the extreme left. So in the end, I'm a moderate ultimately, and I think that's the way most of Erie County people are. I think, to answer your question, when push comes to shove, many people, and not all, because it would be unfair to say that it's all, but many people, if they're pushed too far left, they're going to boomerang to the right. And unfortunately, the extreme has been that what is to the right has, at least in the last decade or more, been this Trumpism. Mm-hmm. That's we as a community voted for President Biden in 2020. So we rejected Trumpism in 2020. And I was at that time chairman of the election board, and didn't make any comments or quotes, but I was asked by a reporter in the New York Times afterwards, what do I think happened in this community, in viewing it as the chairman of the election board. And my answer was that Trump finally had a record that he had to defend, and the people rejected that because he went too far right. But then under this, the Biden administration, I think the same argument could be made that many people thought he went too far left, and they boomeranged back.
I appreciate your honest assessment. I want to read you a couple of quotes from Britton Davis and get your thoughts on it. First quote from the article, he says that the DEI commission just got off on a very bad foot. We tried to rectify that, but for me, it was accountability of taxpayer funds. the administrative structure, and the insider rewarding itself like has been done in Erie for decades. Nepotism and cronyism is alive and well in Erie County. Your thoughts on that comment?
Well, I think most of what he is saying is just his justification for falling into this trap of being comfortable being pushed to the right, and basically just pushing Trumpism in the community. But I don't disagree with them that they got off on the wrong footing, because I don't think eventually they ended up achieving what we created or set out to create as the goal for them. And the goal for them was the money that they received to be seed money, to uplift them and have the ability to go out and get matching money from other organizations. And there was money available, a lot of money available around the community to get different pots of money of 10 million, 5 million from different groups, and match that with other grant possibilities, and to create a permanent fund that would last. And that's why we created this as a commission. So this would last infinitely. And what is happening now, to a large extent, we can blame the county executive, but the failure of to stay with the mission and the execution of what we were trying to create. There's also people that are a part of the commission now that could be blamed for that as well, because they've not been successful at all in taking it to those next steps of being able to secure any of those other funding sources.
Mm-hmm. The next quote is, I think the folks here do need a leg up, but the upward mobility isn't just a black and brown issue. In Erie, there are a vast number of poor people, period. And that is what we should be looking at now. To be fair, that's a sentiment that has been expressed across the country. It's a sentiment I myself have expressed. And it's one of the notions that kind of led to the Poor People's Campaign with Dr. King, right? And so give me your thoughts on that quote and put that in perspective versus the overall situation we're talking about.
Well, I think to an extent that's true, but the fallacy there is that other organizations have equal access to capital or the potential to get that access.
There you go.
And our goal was to ensure that the BIPOC community, black and brown, were able to get access to a certain portion of funding. And let me explain this, if I can, Marcus,
Sure.
what happened here. Now, because there's, outside of this story, throughout the community, there's been all kinds of backlash, discussion, and there was supposed to be this, and why didn't we do that? So the former county executive had promised out in the community to set aside $10 million. The former county executive doesn't have the votes, or doesn't have to muster the votes to actually pass that in the budget. So any county executive, the present, former, or any future, they can make all the promises that they want to people. But ultimately, the buck stops at county council. County council passes the budget, and you have to be able to count to 4 to be able to get anything done in this community, because you have to have a majority to vote and support something. And there were other groups who approached me, leadership in the black community, who said, if you can get us 10% of this money, that would be a victory for us. So Erie County roughly got $53 million. So that would have been about $5 million that they would have received. We actually, what we secured in the budget at that time was $7 million, which was based on this rationale, that the minority communities, black and brown, make up 15% of the population in Erie County. Actually, it's 13.9, but 15%. And we gave 15% of the money to create this Diverse Erie Commission, as it's now called, So they fairly got an equal amount of money as the population represents. Now, there were a couple council members, as I said, it's like 7 different countries, who were adamantly against voting for any of this because of the position that they take, similar to the present county executive. And when we came up with that rationale of fairness, all of this stuff that was created was voted in 7-0 votes. And again, I'm very proud of that, to have been the chairman leading that charge, leading that compromise and collaboration. But also, I'm proud that the members of council who were adamantly opposed to it saw the equity and fairness in the way that we went about it, and they supported that as well. So the point in all of that is there are people who are still left that can sit down at the table and listen to common sense, collaboration, and unity in doing what's best for the community, because these are ultimately supposed to be community servants. And we were able to accomplish that.
Give us a little more inside baseball on some of the other efforts going on or have gone on in Erie where DEI is concerned that maybe have not been mentioned in the article as we head toward the finish line. One of the reasons that I wanted you on the show is because you have a plethora of knowledge on this particular issue. And so what are the things that people are missing that aren't represented in this article?
Yeah, so we created and helped fund a position for the chamber to fund a minority position at the chamber. County council voted to fund that. We created a women as minority in business loan program, which members of this community like Beth Zimmer were able to get a national SBA matching grant of $750,000 for that. Unfortunately, that was undermined and destroyed by the time that I left office, that particular program. We also created a minority loan program at the Redevelopment Authority. We set aside, funding for small businesses. There was a fund to ensure that minority businesses got some of the proceeds of the ARPA money. We created a plethora of opportunities for people, much of which has been dismantled since my time ended on council at the end of 2021.
So in the article, it quotes the fact that at one point Erie was declared, and people have heard this ad nauseum, the worst place in America for African Americans. And that one of the zip codes, I want to say, is 16501, the poorest zip code at one point in the country. What are your predictions for this DEI fight, or the fight for equity and inclusion in Erie, Pennsylvania, as we go forward, given all of the social environment right now and the political environment? Where do you think this is going? Because for a city that has been declared that has the poorest zip code at one point, it's interesting that it is now in this national article as one of the places that says, no, we will fight for this. What do you think the future holds for this in Erie?
Yeah, Marcus, one of the things that I should have mentioned, which isn't specifically a part of this ARPA funding fight, except some elements of it, but Erie County, during the time that I was on council, and I also was one of those who championed for this initiative, after a 50-year fight, created a community college. And then during the ARPA funding, we set aside money to ensure that to make the community college successful in getting it up and running before they got their accreditation, and students would be able to have access to loans and grants for them to be able to go to the school at no charge. And eventually the goal is to ensure that there's never a charge for anybody. And this isn't just minorities. These are poor whites and every other group that's in the country to have an opportunity to get a leg up. And so in that 16501 zip code, there were multiple things that were going on, not just this DEI commission or specific funding, but multiple things happening to create opportunity to rise the boat with the tides, so to speak, to ensure that that zip code and the people that live in that area have hope, have the potential to know that they can participate and have a better life by having opportunity opened up to them through education, through funding, through the community college. Uh, but I submit to you that it's a long, slow process. Unfortunately, it's taken too long already. I think as we've gone to this extreme right, we've moved way back in my lifetime. We worked very hard to overcome the differences that different groups have had. We were I think, very successful in that. And Erie County was right on the doorstep of really taking a leap forward, and we've gone backwards, 30, 40 years. And so what the future holds for us, I believe, is we have a lot of catching up to do exponentially, and then we have to continue to forge forward to ensure that we continue to give people opportunity for hope and uplift them, to give them a chance to participate in the America that the rest of us see, and in the county that the rest of us call and love, Erie County. And we have a responsibility to do that as elected officials, and that's why it's important that we lead, listen, and deliver, or listen, lead, and then deliver, because we are a reflection of the people and what ends up being the best of the people in our community as we continue to help uplift them.
Right. One of the things that I wanted to mention before we get out of here, Carl, is I love how they focus on a couple of small minority-owned businesses here. One was Triple D's Tasty Grill, Daryl Roberts, and Craig Heidelberg with his barbershop, Dapper Don's. And one of the knocks with a lot of these smaller businesses is the reporting out, where we haven't gotten the adequate information that we've needed from these small businesses, yada, yada, yada. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because one, let me point out the fact that the reporting out aspect of it, when it comes to grants, that can be a daunting task, and sometimes you just don't have a full understanding of the information that you need, or sometimes it's just cumbersome. I'll just say it like that. But that's not a Black business thing. That is a grant thing. I'm on the board of an organization that gives out a lot of grants, millions of dollars worth of grants, and that the report out process is something that organizations large and small oftentimes struggle with. And so I feel like the smaller businesses were being picked on a little bit. How important to you is it that not just large scale organizations like ours, but these small businesses that are trying to find their way, how important is it that they in particular have access to counsel before we go, access to capital before we go?
Yeah, so, well, it's extremely important without question, but I would submit to you that even with the grant reporting requirements, much of what is put in there is subjective. So, people can interpret what they want and hold a blind eye to it, or, unfortunately, in some cases, people get away with, multiple things because other people, want to see that agenda achieved, and they hold a blind eye to it. So, we need to give flexibility to the smaller businesses, recognizing that they don't have the ability to hire staffs of grant writers and have accountants and lawyers on staff available to them that can ensure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in the reporting periods. So we have to have faith in each other, first of all, and there's got to be honesty. And certainly, are there going to be some who are going to take advantage of that? well, we know the answer to that is yes, but we need to understand that the access to capital as a government entity like Erie County needs to do all it can to open its mind to ensuring that the small businesses get access to that capital, get access to the types of professionals that can help them ensure that all of the requirements are met.
Oh, man, thank you, Carl. Carl Anderson, thank you so much for joining us today. That's the Washington Post article, May 10th by Tim Craig. Check it out if you get an opportunity. That is it for our show today. Tune in next time for more discussion and analysis of local and national guests. Remember, the Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLN PBS NPR 91.3 FM. If you want to leave a message, comment, or suggestion for the show, you can call the next hotline at 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Marcus Atkinson. Come and join us again so that you can hear about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Peace.